Good evening. I'm Robert MacNeil in New York.
And I'm Jim Lehrer in Washington. After our summary of the news this Thursday, we examine anti-police rap music with a Clarence Page setup and a discussion among actor Charlton Heston, two police officers, and a record company executive. Then Charlene Hunter-Gault continues her Can We All Get Along conversations, this time with editorial cartoonist Doug Marlette.
Part of helping the world live and communicate better is keeping it well informed. That's why funding for the MacNeil-Lehrer NewsHour is provided by AT&T and by PepsiCo. And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
The U.S. today turned up the heat on Iraq for its continued defiance of United Nations resolutions. The Bush administration has threatened military action to force Iraq to meet its obligations under the Gulf War ceasefire agreement. Joint Chiefs Chairman Colin Powell went to the White House to brief the president. Also at the meeting were Defense Secretary Cheney and National Security Advisor Scowcroft. The U.S. has about 36 warships in the Mediterranean in relatively close proximity to Iraq. Pentagon officials today canceled port calls for 4 of them, including the aircraft carrier Saratoga. The officials refused to say whether the ships had been put on alert. White House spokesman Marlin Fitzwater said the message Saddam Hussein should get from the ship movements was that he should get in compliance with the UN. The latest standoff began when Iraq refused to let UN weapons inspectors search a government building in Baghdad. Diplomats at the United Nations today said no further Security Council authorization would be needed for a military strike on Iraq. But the president of the council said this afternoon it had offered Iraq a compromise to break the impasse. Democratic presidential candidate Bill Clinton lent his support to military action. He issued a statement saying, "Let Saddam Hussein make no mistake. Even during an election campaign, Americans are united on this issue. We will not tolerate his defiance of UN resolutions." Iraq's Deputy Prime Minister Tariq Aziz responded defiantly today to threats of force. He said, "Iraq will never abandon its sovereignty, will never accept any insult, and will never allow a UN inspection team to threaten its internal security." Jim?
Israel today announced a cut in new housing in the occupied territories. The housing minister said 6,600 units would not be built, but he said more than 10,000 others would. Most of those are already under construction. The announcement drew criticism from Palestinians who want to freeze on all settlements in the West Bank and Gaza. Syria's foreign minister also dismissed any Arab concessions to Israel because of the settlement cuts. Secretary of State Baker was in Syria today. He also made a surprise visit to Lebanon. We have a report narrated by Richard Vaughn of Worldwide Television News.
James Baker's trip to Lebanon came out of the blue. 9 years after so many American troops were killed in a suicide car bomb attack, the Secretary of State was flouting an American ban on visits to the country in an ongoing bid to bump-start the faltering Middle East peace talks. The timing was not ideal. Only hours earlier, Israeli warplanes had attacked Shiite guerrilla hideouts in southern Lebanon, injuring at least 4 people. It would have brought home to all present the fundamental need for progress. President Elias Harawi has long been rejecting American demands for him to meet James Baker in a third country. Now it was a case of taking the mountain to Muhammad, but the Secretary of State was not unwelcome. After 2 hours of what are always described as frank discussions, both Baker and Harawi emerged content with the accord, which seemed to have been struck, and with the American Secretary openly optimistic that his 6-day peace mission to the Middle East might now have a real chance of success. His talks in Damascus on Wednesday with President Hafez Assad of Syria had been equally cordial and constructive. The next and last port on his whistle-stop tour is to be Saudi Arabia on Friday.
The Bush administration today predicted the nation's unemployment rate would drop nearly 1% by the end of the year to 6.9%. The forecast was part of the administration's mid-year economic report released today. It foresees slightly better economic growth and a much smaller budget deficit than estimated by the White House in January. But Budget Director Richard Darman said the economy would be in better shape if Congress had passed the president's economic proposals. He spoke at a White House briefing this afternoon.
In a single sentence, the Congress has failed to deliver. There is much posturing about interests in economic growth, investment in the future, crime reduction, health reform, and deficit control. But when it comes to constructive congressional action, on a scale of 0 to 10, the total is closer to 0.
House Democrats were quick to criticize the economic review. House Budget Committee Chairman Leon Panetta called it more of a political document than an accurate analysis of where the economy is going. The number of people applying for first-time unemployment benefits rose by 19,000 during the second week of July. The Labor Department reported that 422,000 people filed claims, up 4.7% from the previous week.
Vice President Quayle took political center stage again today. Last night on CNN, he said he would support his daughter if she became pregnant and decided to have an abortion. He said he hoped that that was a choice she would not make. Quayle's daughter, Corrine, is 13 years old. This morning, Marilyn Quayle said there was no question their daughter would take the child to term if such a situation arose. The vice president later tried to clarify his remarks at a campaign stop in Indiana. He said he would not allow her to have an abortion if she were still a minor.
If, under current circumstances, in a hypothetical situation that she would become pregnant, she would have the child. The question last night was if she's a grown-up. That's an entirely different situation.
Vice President, you just said a minute ago...
I would support her decision if she, when she becomes an adult. I would counsel her and encourage her not to have the abortion, but to bring the child to life.
Democratic presidential candidate Bill Clinton said Quayle's remarks were a personal matter, but he said it reinforced the Democrats' position that abortion should not be made a crime. Clinton traveled to Houston today to talk about his plans for fighting crime. He criticized President Bush for opposing gun control legislation known as the Brady Bill. He did so before a crowd of police officers and supporters at City Hall.
I don't see how a president can ask men and women to put on uniforms and risk their lives to keep the rest of us safe if he won't risk a little political capital and take a little heat to ask people to wait 5 or 6 days to check their criminal records or their mental health histories before they get a gun which can kill a policeman. And it is crazy to believe that we shouldn't at least try to give our police officers a fair fight in the fight to keep our streets safe. That's why I believe we ought to be for the Brady Bill, and we ought to take the AK-47s and the Uzis off the streets in America.
Clinton promised not to use the crime issue as a divisive campaign tool, but as a theme to unify America.
In Bosnia, Serbian forces today continued their offensive against several government strongholds in the north of the republic. In the capital, what had been a relatively quiet day turned deadly when a mortar attack killed at least 5 people. 2 members of a CNN crew were also wounded in a separate attack. The head of the United Nations peacekeeping force in Cambodia today accused the Khmer Rouge of conducting a deliberate policy of terror against civilians. The Khmer Rouge is one of the 4 factions which signed a peace accord last October, ending 13 years of civil war. The Khmer Rouge was responsible for killing as many as 1 million Cambodians in the 1970s. UN diplomat Yashushi Akashi today charged the Khmer Rouge with continued ceasefire violations, including the laying of new landmines and artillery attacks.
Peru's Shining Path rebels continued their wave of terror today with more bombings in Lima, the capital. A car bomb exploded on a busy avenue, injuring 10 people. It was one of several attacks during the second day of a general strike called by the Maoist rebels. They had threatened to kill anyone trying to get to work. The search continued today in Colombia for drug baron Pablo Escobar. He escaped yesterday from his hacienda-like jail near Medellin. 26 guards at the jail reportedly were arrested for taking orders from Escobar.
That's our news summary tonight. Now it's on to violent rap lyrics and humor to ease racial tensions.
A piece of rap music called Cop Killer is our lead story tonight, performed by a singer named Ice-T, distributed on an album by the Time Warner Company. It has become the center of a storm over corporate responsibility and the First Amendment. Clarence Page of the Chicago Tribune starts us out with some thoughts about the conflict and its causes.
Urban unrest. How do you feel about it? Where you stand depends a lot on where you live. George Bush, who lives in the White House, says the Los Angeles riots resulted from the shock black Los Angeles felt when the Rodney King verdict let them down.
L.A., that was a shotgun.
But listen to rap musicians like former Los Angeles street gang member Ice-T. You hear a different message. It wasn't shock, it was confirmation. It was also the last straw.
That's what they start off. I got my headlights turned off. I'm not to bust some shots off. I'm not to dump some cats off. I'm a cop killer. That's you and me.
No, Ice-T says he doesn't want to go out and kill a cop. The lyric is theater, he says, a representation of the frustration felt by many young black males who've been hassled by the cops.
The enemies on that album are racist people, the KKK, parents, no matter what race you are, if you teach racism to your kids, and brutal police. And if those are my enemies, so be it.
Another Los Angeles rapper, Ice Cube, stirred up a different controversy for a rap song called Black Korea. Addressed to Korean shop owners, it warned,
So pay respect to the black fist, or we'll burn your store right down to a crisp, and then we'll sink ya.
Again, Ice Cube said his lyric was theater, a representation of the anger felt by many black Los Angeles after a Korean merchant fatally shot a black teenager in the back of the head and received no jail time. It's easy to criticize such angry rappers, especially if you're a politician. Dan Quayle and 60 members of Congress, most of them Republican, called on Time Warner to stop selling Ice-T's Cop Killer. And President Bush called the lyrics sick.
I stand against those who use films or records or television or video games to glorify killing law enforcement officers. It is sick.
Their comments followed Bill Clinton's criticism of Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition for giving a forum to Sister Souljah, famous for making statements like this.
So do you believe there are any good white people?
If there are, I haven't met them. Where are they?
Most rap music is intended only to entertain, like disco in the 70s. But since 1982, when Grandmaster Flash released The Message, rap has given us vivid and often terrifying snapshots of life in the inner city.
So push me, cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. All we are saying is give peace a chance, women.
Like the protest songs of the 60s, rap music has a compelling message. It also may be an early warning system. Rapper Chuck D of the New York group Public Enemy calls rap Black America's CNN. They have a point, but I wouldn't call it news. Rap is commentary, biting social commentary that gives a voice to the ghetto voiceless. And it's not just Black America that's listening to it. Go to any Public Enemy concert, for example, and look around. This proud black group that made Sister Souljah famous draws a very white audience. Are they curiosity seekers? Or does rap as a voice of rebellion cross racial lines? Does it have a special appeal to a 90s generation of rebels without a cause? Or as Tom Petty sings, without a clue? Rap fills the need all teens feel to upset their parents. It also offers middle-class whites a tiny but safe little peek into the ghetto, a fantasy ghetto that absolves them from having to deal with the real thing. These Watergate babies are different from their baby boomer parents who knew the hope and sacrifice of the 60s. Today's teens and 20-somethings know only the scandals and cynicism of the 70s and 80s. They've tuned in many cases, gotten turned off, and dropped out. Which brings up another irony. For all the complaints about radicalism, racism, and misogyny in rap, most rap themes promote conservative values. Pro-family, anti-drug, self-help. New York rapper KRS-One calls it edutainment, educational entertainment.
You had a rap singer here last night named Sister Souljah. I defend her right to express herself through music. But her comments before and after Los Angeles were filled with the kind of hatred that you do not honor today and tonight.
Well, Bill Clinton was right to criticize Sister Souljah for imprudent comments, but maybe he was unfair to the Rainbow Coalition for giving her a forum. She was not a major speaker at the event. She was one member of a 15-member panel. Her views were questioned, argued, and challenged by many, including Jesse Jackson.
We're at war! That's what I told you!
The coalition only turned to Sister Souljah in an attempt to reach out to the new angry and turned-off generation. It was looking for voices who could help channel the energy, anger, and frustration of young America into peaceful change. And why not? It may shock you, but rap wasn't created to make you feel comfortable. Listen closely, America. Your children are talking to you. I'm Clarence Page.
Concern over violent rap lyrics is crystallized in demands that Time Warner pull Ice-T's Cop Killer disc from the market. Actor Charlton Heston made that demand at a recent Time Warner shareholders meeting. David Harleston doesn't agree. He's the president of DEF Jam Records, a New York-based record production company whose rap singers include Chuck D and Public Enemy. Charlton Heston, why should Time Warner pull the record?
I've urged that action on Time Warner and Mr. Gerald Levin, its CEO, at the shareholders meeting, because I think I blame them more than the Ice-T group. They are capitalizing out of greed, in my opinion, and publishing a dangerous record. Now, when I attacked them and when Gerald Levin defended his company, he perhaps sincerely felt that Ice-T, the rap musician responsible for the lyrics, was honest when he said that he was not speaking for himself, he was not voicing his own views, he was acting out a fantasy, expressing what Mr. Levin called a fringe opinion. And a lot of people believed that. I, just today, on the NBC Today show, we heard his statement to the contrary in another videotaped interview he did on the Arsenio Hall show. He said, "Don't go out and kill no police. It's just a record. There's a lot of good cops out there. I know a lot of police officers that try to do the right thing. All this controversy about me trying to say I'm doing a prejudice record, prejudge every cop, that's wrong." Okay, this is what he said on videotape in the other interview. Police ain't bleep. I'm going to bleep this. It loses a lot in the translation, believe me. Use your imagination. The police ain't bleep to me. They never will be. They're a Gestapo organization. Till you start taking them cops down out there in the street, then you all are really still bleeping in the wind. When brothers get ready to do that, I'll be right in the front. You know what I'm saying? But niggers ain't ready to smoke no pig. I personally would like to blow some bleeping police stations up. If it was up to me, I would burn the White House down, you know. I'm an anarchist. I'm ready to do this bleep. Some people gotta die, though. If you ain't ready to spill no blood, then go on out of here. You know what I'm saying? I think Mr. Levin now has to abandon his defense of that as artistic commentary. I think there are, in fact, federal laws against advocating, let alone undertaking, assault on a federal or state officer.
Let me ask David Harleston, as the president of a record company which deals with many of these artists, why do you disagree with Mr. Heston? Why should Time Warner not pull this record?
There are several reasons. For Time Warner to submit to public pressure, pressure that is clearly opposed to an artistic expression.
You call that an artistic expression, sir?
An expression
what
that...
I read.
Mr. Heston, just let him make his case, and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
An expression that is born of anger, that is born of frustration, and contrary to what I think Mr. Heston was suggesting, does not call for the murder of cops, I think is really the end of free expression in this country as we know it. I think you've got to distinguish, Mr. Heston, between what you've reported to have heard Ice-T state on, I think you said, the Arsenio Hall show, and the lyrics of the song itself.
No, on NBC's Today show.
I'm sorry, NBC. The question, I think that the issue that you and others who support the boycott have put on the table is Time Warner or any record company, I think you're suggesting, ought not to distribute records which call for the killing of cops. Not only, in my view, does this record, which for the record is not a rap record, it's a heavy metal record, not only does it not call for the killing of cops, it is quite clear, and Ice-T has expounded on this in numerous other interviews, it's quite clear it's a song about anger. It's a song about frustration. There is some clear cathartic benefit to the song, and the notion that by not getting or not letting the song get to the public, get to music listeners, get to an audience, somehow that frustration or anger can be ignored or will go away, I think is ludicrous. And I think because that is where this boycott is coming from, it is an extraordinarily misplaced intention.
Mr. Heston?
You dismissed then the quote of the rap singer on the NBC show today. You say that didn't happen.
I don't dismiss it.
That's his own opinion. That's what he said.
And that's precisely my point, that if you're talking about the song, then let's talk about the song. And let's talk about whether Time Warner ought to cease distribution of the record embodying the song. What Ice-T says on a television program or a radio interview or writes in an article of his own, I don't think has anything to do with the Time Warner boycott or the argument that you seem to be making about distribution of the song.
Mr. Heston said earlier that there are laws against incitement to killing state or federal officials. Do you think this record is an incitement to excitable young people, black, white, anything else, who might hear it and want to, and because of their rage or whatever, go and kill a cop? Do you think it's an incitement to kill cops?
Absolutely not. And moreover, to suggest that it is, I think, is insulting to listeners of Ice-T and music listeners generally. There is, in my mind, no more likelihood that a music listener of the song Cop Killer is going to go out and kill a cop than there is the likelihood that singing the battle hymns of the Republic is going to lead to international war. It demeans the listeners of music, of rap music and of pop music, to conclude that they're unable to distinguish between art and action.
And Mr. Heston, you clearly think that they can't distinguish between art and action in this case, and that it is an incitement.
Let me shift the argument a bit, sir. If you're comfortable with the lyrics about killing cops, which are quite specific, if we had time, I would read them, but I can't.
We showed them in our piece. We had them on the screen earlier.
Okay, let me suggest another thing. Homosexuals and Jews are targets of violence as well, sometimes murderous violence, though not as frequently as police officers. Let me ask you, sir, if the title of this song, Cop Killer, in the album were Fag Killer, and the lyrics said, die, 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 kike, die, would you be as comfortable about the Time Warner distributing the record?
Would you?
If you're asking would I support distribution of the record, notwithstanding those lyrics, the answer is yes. Let's not forget that Jews and homosexuals and blacks and a whole host of other insular minorities in America have historically been the target of defamatory and negative lyrics in song. Curiously, no one has called for a boycott of those kinds of artists or those kinds of lyrics. My answer is yes, and I encourage everyone to remember history as it is.
Let me ask you, Mr. Harleston, what kind of scrutiny or monitoring do record companies like yours, and in this case the Time Warner, the company that Time Warner owns that publishes Ice-T, what kind of scrutiny of lyrics do you do? Do you just pass anything that the musician hands in? Do you have any criteria for eliminating some lyrics and passing others?
Well, we don't have a content-based criteria for eliminating some lyrics or permitting others. And again, I can only really
You do screen them? You have a procedure for screening them?
No, we don't have a procedure for screening lyrics at all. We evaluate the development of an artist's music from the moment they walk into the studio until the album is finished. The judgments that are made by our A&R department, by the owner of the company, by anyone else involved in the process, is this good music? Is the artist being true to the artist's vision, as we understood that vision when we signed the artist?
So do I understand you correctly? You would never say to a rap artist or a rock artist, you can't publish this lyric by our recording company. We object to this line or that. You would never say that.
That's correct.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Mr. Heston?
Well, I know that, in fact, Time Warner, despite their protestations of their determination to defend creative freedom, pre-censored the cover of Cop Killer, which originally showed Ice-T standing with a gun over a prostrate police officer, and Time Warner insisted on changing the original title of the whole album, which was Cop Killer, to Body Bag. And let me shift to another argument. I'm interested in the
do you think that record companies should censor, if that's the word, or edit the lyrics they publish?
You know, censorship is, if you refuse to publish something, you're not saying the artist cannot do it.
No.
You're saying, I don't want to market this. Now, if this gentleman is saying that he exercises no choice whatever, I find that specious. Every company rejects, alters, amends the content of every record, every move. I've been doing this all my life. I know very well the degree to which every company takes a hand in the creative content of the project.
But what do you say, since that isn't the case here, what do you say, Mr. Heston, about Mr. Harleston's argument, and Clarence Page referred to it in his piece setting this up, that there is actually a value in these violent-seeming rap lyrics because they're an expression, culture expression of the anger and the frustration of people in the ghettos?
There's a great deal of carryings-on in the university about what they call hate speech, and that seems to be directed in the other avenue. Let me try another thing.
So you don't see a valuable therapeutic quality to this. I'd just like to get your response to that.
No, I don't think so. I don't think society has any responsibility to allow this kind of expression of opinion. This has nothing to do with creative expression. We've already established that this is, in fact, his opinion. This is his wish. He has said as much.
Why do you feel it is valuable and therapeutic?
It's valuable for a whole host of reasons, not the least of which being that we are here on television discussing a very important issue, and that is rage and anger in a community that has been ignored and disenfranchised since the beginning of this country. Ice-T is rapping in this particular song, or has written lyrics.
He says it isn't rap, incidentally. He says people only call it rap because it's black. It's actually rock.
It's hard rock. It's heavy metal. He's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And
Somebody defined rap as music for people who can't sing.
Okay. Anyway.
The point that I'm trying to make is that Ice-T is conveying to this country, whether we want to hear it or not, that we are in trouble. Our cities are in trouble. Our citizens are in trouble. And anybody who has been subject to something like police brutality, brutality brought about on account of the victim's race, knows about that anger. And for those of us who have not been subject to it, we need to know about it because it is hurting people. It is diminishing the values of their lives, and it's something that at the very least we need to talk about, and at most do something about.
Mr. Heston?
I think you have perhaps revealed your opinion. Whether or not it's Mr. Levin's, I can't say. You seem to be saying that you approve of this, that you advocate it, that you think it is a position that should be supported and encouraged. I think America does not agree with you, sir.
Let me be very clear. You've completely misstated and I believe missed the point of my statement. What I said was it is crucial that this country understand, hear, recognize what is wrong with this country. That's what Ice-T's record is all about. Now, your suggestion that I'm not sure what you suggested that I advocated. I've stated that, to my mind, there's nothing in this song that advocates cop killing. So I object to your suggestion that I believe that.
Mr. Heston, let me ask you something. Ice-T said in another interview, he's given a lot of interviews, he said in another interview, and this goes to your business, the movies, Arnold Schwarzenegger blew away dozens of cops as the Terminator, but I don't hear anybody complaining about that. Do you think there's something different in the two forms?
Arnold Schwarzenegger was playing a robot And he has never supported the idea that he should go around or that anyone should go around killing policemen, as Ice-T just did in the interview I read, as aired on NBC today. Let me shift to another cut.
Well, I'm afraid we've come to the end of our time. I'd like to hear your other idea, but that is the end of our time allotted for that. Do you have a final comment on that? On the difference between movies and the rap records?
Well, I'm not sure what the difference is. I must say I'm somewhat surprised to hear Mr. Heston speak in support of contraction of the mix of ideas in this country, being an individual who is an artist himself.
We have to leave it there. Mr. Harleston and Charlton Heston, thank you very much for joining us.
Next tonight, the stranglehold drugs and guerrillas have on Peru. Fatal bombings and a 2-day general strike called by Maoist Shining Path guerrillas have brought a reign of terror to the country. And the hardline government of Alberto Fujimori can't seem to stop them. The rebels feed off Peru's vast illicit drug trade. It's estimated the country produces 2/3 of the world's supply of cocaine. Much of the raw cocoa is grown in the Huallaga Valley. Correspondent Elizabeth Farnsworth visited the area and filed this report.
East of the high peaks of the Andes lies the Huallaga River Valley, a vast, sparsely populated area 5 times larger than the country of El Salvador. The Huallaga's great expanse of green is broken by small villages like Chinao or Lamas that look peaceful and lovely in the afternoon sunshine. But just beyond are the bushes that provide the leaf for 2/3 of the world's crack and cocaine. In recent years, this valley has become a war zone where drug traffickers, the military, the police, and 2 leftist guerrilla groups fight for power. 10,000 people have died here since the mid-1980s. The Maoist Shining Path, Peru's largest, most ruthless guerrilla organization, controls much of the southern part of the valley. It even dominates the area around the U.S.-funded Santa Lucia base, which houses a unit of special counter-narcotics police and about 30 advisors from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. A second guerrilla group, the Tupac Amaru Revolutionary Movement, or MRTA, is fighting for control of the northern half of the valley, around the city of Tarapoto. A local cameraman filmed this confrontation between guerrillas and the army along a key stretch of highway outside Tarapoto. The MRTA was showing its strength and harassing the military. After a few hours of combat, soldiers moved in, and the guerrillas faded back into the hills. As we arrived in Tarapoto, soldiers were patrolling the streets because the guerrillas had called a general strike. They were threatening to kill anyone who defied them. A few shops closed, but most vendors refused to be intimidated. This man was about to open his stall in the central market.
We can't go along with something that's called by armed guerrillas. We don't agree with them. We're always looking for peace and a way for our families to survive.
Survival is tough in Tarapoto. People here are often caught between the military, the guerrillas, and the drug traffickers.
Every day the violence grows. We are living in a very insecure situation. It seems untrue, a lie. There is no security. There is no tranquility.
Mario Gonzalez came to the Huallaga as a school teacher 18 years ago. He has watched the valley change as coca became the main crop. One of his schools was in Lamas, a village just outside Tarapoto.
5 years ago, I worked here in Lamas as director of a teacher's college. It was the first institute of higher education in this village. I was founder and director, and in that period, Lamas was one of the most tranquil villages in the state, but then the indiscriminate planting of coca began and the first guerrilla groups arrived. Behind these little hills, there used to be corn, there used to be beans. corn, beans, and pineapples. Now it's all coca. Everyone knows it, but it's not against the law to plant coca in Peru, so they just leave it alone. And today, we have llamas abandoned by the forces of the state and won over by subversion. The tranquility is only on the surface.
Lamas is a key stronghold of the MRTA, and as we walked through the village, Mario lamented the fact that many of his best students have become either guerrillas or coca farmers.
No tienen dónde trabajar.
The young will join the MRTA because they have nowhere to work. There are no jobs. There are no agricultural credits for alternate crops. One alternative is to be a teacher, but in the countryside, a teacher makes very little money, so even teachers are planting coca, with the help of their students' fathers.
En route to other villages where Mario had taught school, our car was the only vehicle on the road. Because of the strike, travelers stayed home to avoid the wrath of the guerrillas. We had planned to hike into the coca fields, but with the army and the guerrillas out in force, it was impossible. We found coca farmers in their villages, also trying to avoid trouble.
Está en 270 ahorita. El kilo. 270 el kilo.
In Shanao, a coca farmer told us he would prefer to grow corn, but there is no market, and the price is too low. Price supports for alternate crops would be one solution, Mario said. But the government of President Alberto Fujimori, in its embrace of the free market, has dropped price supports for corn and other crops. This video shot for Peruvian television shows how farmers grow the coca leaf and process it into paste, using their feet to mix the leaves with kerosene and other chemicals. Traffickers ship the paste from clandestine landing strips to Colombia for processing into crack or cocaine. When President Alberto Fujimori suspended the Constitution and disbanded Congress on April 5th, he argued that the extreme measures were necessary to combat the drug traffickers and guerrillas. But so far, not much has changed in the Huallaga. Peruvian police and their U.S. advisors from the DEA continue to dynamite landing strips and to burn remote laboratories. But within days of uprooting plants, destroying a landing strip, or burning a lab, new ones appear deeper in the jungle.
The acts of war, the destruction of the plants, the attempts to eliminate the bands of drug traffickers and the guerrillas have failed to produce any results. After 5 or 6 years of applying this policy, the cultivation of coca has increased, not decreased.
General Eduardo Bellido commands all the forces which are fighting the drug and guerrilla wars in the Huallaga. He said the Shining Path and the MRTA are formidable enemies because they get millions of dollars a year from the drug traffic.
For each flight of coca paste from here, they get between $12,000 and $15,000. And this finances their food and pays them an average of $400 to $500 a month, as if they were mercenaries of the revolution. A functionary with many years of working for the state doesn't earn that much. A mercenary of the guerrillas earns much more than a general of the army, as in my case. Gana mucho más que un general del ejército, como en mi caso. Sus remuneraciones son superiores. The guerrillas have better pay, better equipment, good radios, and they can buy good arms.
Peruvian conscripts, on the other hand, are poorly paid and equipped. And for the entire Huallaga, the military has fewer than 10 helicopters. General Bellido admitted that the lack of resources leaves the military and police open to corruption. But even with all the difficulties, he said he was having some success. He let us speak with a Shining Path guerrilla who had given herself up and was providing useful intelligence to the army. She was nervous and insisted on wearing a mask for the interview. In private, she told us she was not being mistreated. She is only 15 years old.
Siéntate ahí con la señorita, con la señora, perdón.
Yo me incorporé.
I joined up and I spent 5 months with the Shining Path. After 2 months, they gave me the rank of Militar de Compañía, company military commander. 30 men were under me. A company is led by 3 commanders, military, political, and logistical. I had children from 7 years up under my command. They were combatants. They're the children of people organized by the party, and they have to join the guerrilla army. They can't rebel. They can't flee to an army base and tell all because of their families. If the children tell anything, their families suffer.
Both sides in this war caused their share of suffering. The army is accused of taking prisoners and then making them disappear. As we left the base, our car was surrounded by people whose relatives had been taken from their homes at night by the army.
We're in a state of emergency here, and there are no innocents. It's lucky we found you. You need to know what's happening. My brother isn't guilty, so why are they keeping him at the base so long? We can't say anything. We know prisoners are treated